Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Land Fan Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Mason McDonald. Mason McDonald is a former hospital CEO turned full-time land investor. Mason owns and operates RM Golden LLC, a company that focuses on the acquisition of discounted land throughout the United States for the purpose of immediate resale or minor development and resale. Through his own experiences, Mason recognized the need for capital partners in the land space and co founded Ground Up Fund, a capital solution for land investors nationwide. Mason co hosts his own podcast, The Bigger Picture Blueprint, with Dan Haberkost. Mason, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
Kendall, glad to be here.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you. We've had Dan on the show, and it's
Mhm.
nice to hear from his co host now. Let's just jump right in. How did you get started in doing land deals?
Yeah, so I always was interested in real estate investing. I went the corporate route, but knew that I would have to purchase rental properties or do something to create passive and active income separately from my regular job. And after making my way in corporate America and my wife making her way in corporate America, we saved up a little bit of money and we were ready to invest. And we wanted to, I don't know, flip a house or a mobile home or invest in a syndication or something, but we didn't know what. And I live in Colorado Springs, and I took a guy by the name of Brent Bowers out to lunch one day, and he was raising money for a townhome project he was doing. And he said, "Hey, you could take 60 grand, invest with us, and make 8% a year for 3 years." And I'm like, my savings account is making 5%. So that doesn't sound too appealing. And he told me about land flipping, which seemed just silly to me. But he said he was making a good amount of money per month flipping land. And I asked him, I was like, just prove it, show me. And he showed me. And so I took the Land Sharks course and thought it was super silly. I was like, there's no way this is going to work. And in November of 2021, I purchased my first land deal, three lots for 43,000, and I sold them for 185,000 and quit my job. And yeah, that was the initial journey.
That's great. I love that. You mentioned working with Brent's fantastic friend of mine, Land Sharks, great community. Were there any other mentors or coaches that you learned from when you started your land investing journey?
No, not at the beginning. Just copy and pasted what Brent told me to do. And that first deal gave us enough runway for me to quit my job. And my wife was still working full time as a software engineer. So a lot of people hear that and they're like, whoa, you just quit your job just like that. And I'm like, yeah, we had a six-figure income, was supported by my wife. Don't just take it that way. But no, followed what Brent did. And I've iterated since then in the past 3 years and learned from other people in the community. But yeah, that's where I initially learned the system.
That's fantastic and such a great point. You had another six-figure income. There was a safety net there. So, can you talk a little bit about what was that mindset piece like for you when you were hearing about this land flipping stuff? You're like, there's no way that this works. How did you push through that and actually do that first deal and do the actions that it took leading up to that first deal?
Yeah, I think to give a little bit of context, so I was in an executive position with the company that I was at. I was I guess COO. No, I was CEO at the time whenever I took Brent's course of a hospital out here in Colorado Springs. So I always thought big and was used to really big numbers of managing $100 million plus P&L and doing big multi-million dollar projects. Whenever I saw the cost of mail and the cost that you could buy a lot of this land, it just didn't scare me too much. Uh, so at the beginning of it, I paid to join the community and take a course. And whenever I pay for something, I force myself to take action. That's sometimes why it's useful to pay for education or pay for different services, because otherwise you just feel like it's a sunk cost and a waste of your time and waste of your money. So I figured I have to at least do something. And the cost of mail was just nothing. I sent 450 letters for my first campaign to get that deal. And which, yeah, I don't get return. I don't get rates of return like that anymore. But I only sent 450 letters, which was like, I don't know, 275, $300. And that first land deal that I bought for just over 40,000, which that was the scary part of the way that we looked at it, was we were like, worst case scenario, we can probably break even. Because that land deal, I did not know, I didn't feel confident in what I was doing. Which we can talk about at some point. Of you got to go scrape your knees, you got to take action and learn from your experiences, because if I hadn't done that one, I don't think I would be where I'm at today. But the worst case scenario for us was I sunk a few thousand into a land course, a thousand or a few hundred into software and systems and mail, and then 40,000 into a piece of land. And luckily, we were fortunate enough to be in a position where it wouldn't have been the end of the world if we just totally lost everything. So it wasn't a do or die situation, which I think allowed me to not operate in that scarcity mindset and feel comfortable taking a risk, because that's what it was at this point in time. I did not have the knowledge. I had not paid down the ignorance debt to feel confident in the decision that I made to buy that initial piece of land.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I love that term, the ignorance debt. So, can you talk a little bit about what is your current business model look like? What types of land deals are you specializing in right now?
Yeah, so I started with a little bit of a specialized approach and then a shotgun approach, and now I'm narrowing the scope a little bit. I am very much of the entrepreneur shiny object syndrome type of person. I get bored very easily, so I've done a lot. I think I've done deals in 15 states at this point in time. Just the simple land flip model of buy it for cheap, sell it for more. It's like you're a pawn shop of people don't want their land, you have a number, you make them an offer, you close on the deal, you relist it with an agent. I think at this point, I've only done maybe 6 wholesale deals ever. It's all been purchase and then resale. And I started in a small town in Colorado, in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, which was a mountain town. Did my first, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 deals out there, and then started expanding beyond that into Arizona, Florida, Carolina, Southeast Sunbelt, Texas, that kind of area, just for simple land flips. I completed a minor subdivision for the first time at the end of last year in Arizona, which we finally, almost a year later now, got offers on 2 of the pieces of land. So it's been a longer hold period than expected. And I'm happy to talk not just about the wins, but the things that have not gone as planned in this business. And I'm currently now shifting my focus to do a lot more deals in my backyard. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We're consistently one of the best places, rated as one of the best places to live in the country. Right before this call, actually, I was walking 240 acres just east of here. I got home 30 minutes before this call, and we've got, I'll pull it out for anyone watching, of the sellers already created the plat map a few years ago.
Wow.
I don't know if that
Wow.
showed up well, but kind of focusing a little bit more on deals in our backyard, these agricultural subdivisions in Colorado where you keep them over 35 acres. It really simplifies the process, and buy it for cheap, split it, sell it for more.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that minor subdivide. I know it's probably a huge sort of relief starting to get some action on the dispo side of that. Now, let me ask you this. For people that are listening to this and they've always been interested in investing in land, but maybe they had the similar mindset of there's no way that this works. Who's going to just sell their property for pennies on the dollar or at a discount? What would you say to those people?
I think humans can only comprehend numbers over 70. And
Mhm.
there are over 330 million people that live in the United States, and millions of parcels of land out there. Some of which have been developed, some of which have not been developed, some that were bought recently, some that were bought decades or even centuries ago. And you need to get out of your own way in making assumptions about what a seller wants or doesn't want. We've made offers that are laughably low, and we operate as ethically as we possibly can, where we say, hey, look, this is who we are. We're investors. If you want top dollar, this is what I think your land is worth on market. Go to a realtor. We can refer a realtor to you. Or if we don't know the market super well, we can say, hey, this is who's selling land in the area. Maybe give them a call. This is what we can pay if we do the quick cash close of a 30, 45-day close or something like that. And this is what we can pay if we do an extended close or a seller finance type of deal. And you just never know with the seller what their situation is, what their emotion that they have tied to the land is, or anything about them. You can build these seller avatars and try and understand them as much as you possibly can, but humans are irrational beings. And we can't operate in assumption in this business. How many impulse purchases have we made as you're checking out at Target and buying stuff you don't need and all sorts of stuff like that? So I think just remembering that humans are irrational and you can't make assumptions about what their behavior is going to be makes it so where you can purchase great deals at an extreme discount all the time.
Yeah, that is such a great piece of advice. I love that we can't make assumptions in this business. I think that needs to be on a poster in my office as a good reminder because it is so true. Now, you mentioned that you've done way more sort of these traditional flips where you buy first and then flip as opposed to wholesaling. Is there any particular reason why you gravitated towards that over wholesaling or maybe even double closes?
Yeah, I think that initially I wanted to understand this business. And I feel like the only way to fully understand a business is to put your hands in every single part of the transaction, from market selection to data pulling to marketing to negotiation and lead intake, transaction coordination, closing the deal, listing the deal, and selling the deal. And for my first deal, that's what I wanted to experience. That's, I think, how I had success in my corporate role was when I first got started in the hospital or in the healthcare industry. I had a year-long residency where I worked every single job in the hospital. I built a budget for $30 million expansion and created the pro forma and presented it to corporate executives. It was a huge company of a Fortune 200 company, to scrubbing toilets, to working as a tech on the units. And I worked in behavioral health, tricky patients to work with, of being involved in not anything licensed clinical work or anything like that, but working as a tech on the unit, doing night shifts and working in every single department, all 19 departments or whatever it was in the hospital. So I think it's crucial as you're building a business to be involved in every part of it. And I feel like if you start with kind of the wholesaling or double close model, you're going to miss out on a lot of the stages in the pipeline of a full cycle deal. And second to that, I'm very anti-litigious and I don't want to get sued. I think that's the healthcare background in me of not terrified of getting sued, but I operate businesses in a way that avoid that. And I think just with the legal changes that have been going on for this year and then in the past, I feel like you open yourself up to potentially more risk operating a wholesaling or double close model if you're not being fully and entirely transparent with it. I think with that being said, I do wish we had more of a wholesale model because obviously like it takes a lot more capital, both on the raising side and then our own capital deployment to be able to do this buy and sell model constantly. However, we just haven't built it out. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to it. We just haven't built out the teams and systems to be able to be so effective at dispo that we're finding our buyers. I like to outsource that to agents that are professional at it and, not have to do it ourselves.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, there's a lot of talk right now about speculation of the market and the changes that we're seeing in the real estate market. May I ask, where do you see the market going and how do you plan on pivoting to thrive in the upcoming market?
I think that every deal, I'm going to have my individual investment thesis on that particular deal, whether it's we're under contract to buy for 10,000, think we're going to sell it for 21,000 or something like that, which is just a great base hit deal that'll pay half our marketing expense for a month or something like that. Great, fantastic. So I think if the deal pencils out, the deal is going to pencil out. And whenever you're doing those lower risk investments, you're able to potentially take a higher degree of risk because the beautiful thing about land, and what I love so much about it, is the multiple disposition strategies that you have available in your tool belt for it. Of say you can't sell it for cash on the market, you can sell it on terms and do a seller finance deal. You can potentially, if you're buying raw land and not vacant land, you can go through the entitlement process or do horizontal improvements to make it more appealing to the end buyer or builder. You can potentially go vertical yourself and work with a builder to joint venture with them or do a fee build or get a hard money loan or something like that if you own the land. So I think that in general, I don't factor too many market considerations at the macro level. I more focus on the micro trends that are going on. With the deals that we're narrowing our scope on a little bit out here of close to my hometown, or not hometown, but close to where I live and going into these more rural communities, I feel like there's a tendency, and this is speculation, this is not based on data. So here's my market speculation. I think that sometimes in election years, people get scared. I think whenever there's war, people get scared. And I think that whenever a city starts expanding and starts getting bigger, it's a little bit of suburban flight starts occurring of people leaving suburbia rather than the city flight, people moving into the suburb. I think that there's more traffic here now and people are wanting to get a little bit more out in the country. So I think we're targeting a little bit more of these deals, but we're going to keep doing infill lots and infill lot flips in markets where if you look at the past 25 years or 30 years of census data, net migration has constantly increased in these states. What I pay attention to rather than whatever the news is saying or whatever your buddy's uncle's cousin who is a realtor that is friends with the government or something like that is saying, I look at the largest institutions in America and the world and what their annual reports and white papers are. I look at what BlackRock thinks. I look at what PwC, Deloitte, the big four, what these large private equity institutions are coming out with of, hey, these are the markets that are hot. This is what's hot right now. And if you go back and look in arrears at all of this data, you're like, oh, people keep moving to Florida and Texas. People keep moving out of California and New York, but people are also moving into California and New York. California and New York is not going to die or anything like that. It's one of the most desirable places to live in the country. All that to say in the most long-winded way possible, Kendall, I look at what the best people are doing in the industry, what the experts have that are paying hundreds of millions of dollars to analyze this data. And then I focus on these micro trends that are a little bit more anecdotal, but also that the data shows of, hey, land is finally picking up again, which I'm excited about of October 2024. It feels like stuff is selling that I've had on the market for hundreds and hundreds of days now. So I feel good about the market.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great piece of advice there. Looking to what are some of these like huge players in the industry, the BlackRocks are doing. For someone that's listening to this that said, man, that's a great idea. I've never even thought about that. Where do you go to find that information? Is there a particular source that you look for those big four players?
Yeah, I start with Google. And from Google, not to be cheeky, but yeah, I Google PwC annual real estate outlook white paper or something along those lines. And if you just follow those pages on LinkedIn, so call it Ernst & Young, Deloitte, PwC, that other big four that no one remembers, and then BlackRock, if you follow them on LinkedIn, they post this stuff all the time. And it's public information. You don't have to subscribe to some ridiculous monthly newsletter or anything like that. They come out with these annually and they post articles all the time. Just start with Google or LinkedIn and follow these big companies.
Imagine having a complete toolkit for success right at your fingertips. That's exactly what you get with Only Land Fan School, our premium online community. For a low monthly fee, access our treasure trove of resources, the on-market deals course, acquisitions tool suite, and Dispo Secrets library. Plus, connect with fellow flippers in our active community. Whether you're hunting for deals or closing sales, Only Land Fan School has you covered with step-by-step guidance and insider knowledge. Ready to supercharge your land flipping journey? Join Only Land Fan School at olfschool.com today. Yeah, that's a fantastic nugget. Thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned that your model is very dependent upon capital, right? You need the capital to be able to take down these deals. So I know that you also co-founded Ground Up Fund, but before you started that company, how would you go about raising capital for your deals?
It's the three F's of the friends, family, and fools that were interested in investing with me. But yeah, it varied in ways of the actual structure of the deal. And then I can talk about the approach to raising the money, where first and foremost is create a track record for yourself. It's hard to be a desirable investment prospect if you've never made money. So even though I still view myself as brand new to land investing, I've only been doing this 3 years. I've just hit over 100 deals maybe a month or two ago.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. But so I created a track record in my corporate life. I got a good undergrad degree. I got a good master's degree that I'm sure I'll pay off for the rest of my life because I can't stand just putting a big chunk of change at my student loans. But got good education and made it in corporate. Of every 12 months, I was promoted to a position with increasing responsibility and increasing pay. So I had this great corporate track record that looks really good on paper. And then from there, my first dozen or so deals, I funded myself. And then that spreadsheet that you can show people of, hey, look at the deals that I've done. Would you like to participate? Because at least proven myself in some capacity in this space. of, and in that first deal, which I'm still waiting for another one as good as that first deal, where you hit a triple your money. But I think being able to just show that data of what I've accomplished in the land world, and then have that kind of corporate experience, corporate resume background, made me trustworthy. So I started out with family, and I've made my family a lot of money being able to invest with me, which is fun, and then extended it to friends. And I gave up lots of the profit in these deals. I've paid investors well over $1 million in the past 3 years on deals that we've done, and they don't do anything. They just hand me the money. And so you start printing cash like that for people, it becomes really attractive. And I think one of the most important things is, because as the network expanded, got the podcast going and been interviewed on a good amount of shows, and I'm trying to be better about social media. I'm horrible at social media, but I'm trying to just post more consistently and share what I'm doing. You create a brand and an image and a name for yourself. And the most important thing within creation of that brand is never lose your investors' money. Always have a tendency to underpromise and overdeliver. We've had deals that have taken longer than what we expected, which is the speculative part. But anytime that we've done a deal where a note is a part of it, in August, I had to pay off a $400,000 note for a property that hadn't sold yet. It still hasn't sold yet. And so I will never lose investor capital, and being able to have a track record of, hey, never going to lose you money. I've never lost money. You can call any of these investors that have invested with me, I think has made it substantially easier to raise money. It's still hard to raise money. It's been hard for the past 18 months to raise money. I think anyone in the capital world can say, hey, it's a little harder now than it was maybe a few years ago. It seems like it's getting easier. A lot of people have been sitting on the sidelines for a while. So there's a good amount of money out there. But I think all that to say, creation of a track record, being trustworthy, and having people that will advocate for you on your behalf makes it more simple to do.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that component that you talked about, that personal brand, because whether or not we want to acknowledge it, everyone has a brand. You're either being intentional about it or you're not. So I love that piece about it. Now, can you talk a little bit about how soon in your career did you start entertaining the idea of seller finance, either whenever you were on the buy side or owner finance when you were on the sell side?
I have yet to buy one on the buy side seller financing. I just made a seller finance offer 5 minutes before we got on.
Awesome.
So
It's
we'll
a
see.
big day, Mason. A lot of
Yeah,
firsts. It's
yeah.
good.
So we'll see. Which that's a $700,000 purchase price, and I offered 20% down with 9.99% interest to make it really competitive in their eyes. Older couple that I was out meeting with before this, but so I haven't done it on the buy side. On the sell side, I think I maybe sold my sixth or seventh one on terms, and I was really interested in it. And then I think I sold my 10th one on terms. And hopefully this week or next week, we'll finally have the deed in lieu of foreclosure on that one resolved 18 months after no payments on it, because it was one of those situations where, and this is a small one, but we bought the land for 11, sold it for 23 on terms. I had to bring cash to the closing table on that. I don't do that anymore. And they were talking a big game of, oh, we want to do payments at $1,000 a month on it. And I'm like, let's not do that. Let's do lower payments. I'm looking at your pay stubs. Like, you can't afford that. And so we did that, and they paid for, I think, 2 months, and then they stopped paying, went off the grid. 6 months later, they started paying again at a new payment plan of 100 a month. And then they stopped paying 1 month after that. And yeah, here we are a year and a half plus later, I think going on 2 years since I sold this land to them, and finally getting the deed in lieu of foreclosure. And the reason I bring up the numbers on that is a foreclosure attorney and going through the entire process and everything like that would end up potentially taking so much more time and costing more money than the property could be worth. I don't do low down payment seller finance deals anymore, but hopefully have it resolved. And I do enjoy getting monthly checks on my ones that I still have going. So this is the only real painful one that I've had, but early on, to answer your question.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So if someone's listening to this and they've only done traditional cash sales, there's a lot of talk about how selling on seller finance will actually open up the buyer pool quite a bit. So what advice would you have for people that are about to dip their toe into the seller finance pool? What are some good rules of thumb that you can share with the audience?
I think that look at it like a rental tenant potentially, and do a higher degree of screening than maybe some people do. I historically have just done give me your last two pay stubs, and I think that you should probably start beyond just doing last two pay stubs. I think you should get a credit report, whether it's a soft pull or a hard pull, or them screenshotting Credit Karma, an additional method of verification there that they're not ultra high risk people. I think Googling them too, of this person that stopped paying. I Googled them and they had super violent criminal charges on them that I found out about after they stopped paying. And I'm not saying to discriminate in any capacity about anything or anyone, but potentially there could be some tendencies of them not being able to pay because their life is a little bit more in turmoil than you would expect. And then lastly, set them up for success of, hey, if you're doing extend the note longer, of don't sell it on a 3-year note, maybe sell it on a 3-year balloon, but a 10, 15, 20, 30-year amortization schedule, and make sure you don't have to bring money to the closing table. Because if they can't afford even a 10% down payment, they're not going to be able to make your monthly payments typically, especially on these really small, like I say really small, a $20, $30, $40,000 sale price. So I think that's where I would look, is additional screening and higher down payment.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities in the land space right now that not very many people are talking about?
I think that's a good question. I think, I don't know if it's people aren't talking about it, but being able to bridge that gap of the institutional or bank finance or financing opportunities to the land space. It's really hard to get a loan from a bank for land, especially if you're not planning on building on it for yourself, or even if you're planning on building on it as a builder, where I think that's where the greatest opportunity is. I think one of the biggest challenges in this land space is the private equity folks, the institutional capital out there. It's really hard to get them to write a check for anything less than 25 million. And that's what we've discovered in this space is it's really easy to raise a few hundred thousand, maybe a million or two. It's really easy to raise 25, 30, 50 million. It's really hard to raise that 5 to 10 million, which is what I feel like a lot of people in this business that are doing a good amount of deals are able to deploy effectively on an annual basis. Where, Dan and I have been approached by larger institutional people that are like, dude, we like what you guys are doing. If we park 30 million with you, how quickly can you get it moved? And we're like, I don't know. I don't think very quickly. And mistakes love a rushed decision. And I think that if you had that much capital available to you and you're forced to deploy it within a few months, I think you would start getting a lot more deals. And I think with the land space, you don't want to turn it into a venture capital model where you make really great returns on one or two, and then most of them you lose money on and some do okay. So I think figuring out how to effectively within communities like what you've built, Kendall, what we've built, as well as Kira here, of they're doing big time deals and everything like that. I think that being able to learn how to effectively deploy that much capital, because there's more than enough margin to make what these people want, which the huge family offices, they're not looking to get what these freaking land investors are asking for. I won't invest in your deal unless I double my money, which is ridiculous. But
Right.
these huge offices, they're looking to make anywhere from 8 to 12% a year. And they put portions of their portfolio anywhere from a 5% annualized target to a 20% annualized target. And I think that bridging that gap is going to be where the most opportunity is is in this space.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. Now, shifting gears a little bit, can you drill down for us into how you go about picking target markets? We've talked a little bit about this earlier, but let's get into some specifics. How do you go about picking a target market?
For myself at the beginning, or I guess in the middle, as well as anyone that I'm talking to about land investing, start macro to micro. Look at the US Census data and look at where people are moving. Look at the migratory patterns in the United States. And there's so many sources for that. Census.gov, a lot of the moving companies like U-Haul and I don't know, American Moving Company and stuff like that put out, hey, here's where people are moving, and then start there and then start there. So you see, okay, here's the trends where most likely this is going to mean there's going to be demand for new construction in these markets because so many people are moving to these markets. And then you start looking a little bit more micro of, okay, what does my access to capital look like? Can I afford to purchase deals in this market, even if it's at a discount? Do I have capital partners that can assist me in purchasing it? Or am I going to do a wholesale model? that we're going to be able to make margins on. And then you start being able to look at these cities and these counties where there's a lot of transaction data, which typically we like to look at 90-day list versus sold. If in the last 90 days there's an equal or greater amount selling than there is coming on the market, you can assume your turnaround time for a deal is going to be right around 90 days, which is a pretty great number. And I think from there, you look at the individual subdivisions. I think I hear so often in this space that people market to entire counties, which is ridiculous. There's counties where there's tons and tons of stuff going on in one small section of it. And then there's areas in the county where if you bought a piece of land there, it's horrible. Real estate, the first rule of real estate, or the first three rules of real estate, are location. And knowing that real estate is not just county dependent or city dependent or zip code dependent, but it's street dependent. If you invest on the wrong side of the street or the railroad tracks or whatever it might be, whatever that potential barrier is, you could have a deal that's absolutely horrible. And I think that that's why we try and focus on really small lists, which is a big pain to pull whenever you're circling all these polygons on PropStream of trying to find, okay, in the last 90 days of this particular neighborhood, there's a lot of deals that are transacting. But you know that if you get a lead from that particular campaign, whether you're cold calling, texting, or emailing, or sending mail, exactly how much you can pay for it. And then beyond that, having just some sort of local insight will greatly increase your market knowledge once you get to that specific level. So finding a great land specialist agent, or for those of you guys that are working at more the wholesale double close model, have conversations with the builders and learn what their buy box is and learn how much they're buying land for and where they actually want it. That's how we've approached market selection.
That's excellent. And what criteria do you pull whenever you're pulling your lists? There are particular zones that you like zoning, or talk to us about that.
It depends on what our anticipated exit strategy is. So for simple infill, we typically look at, once again, whatever's transacting, which it goes into what our funding model is. Yeah, we target infill lots and demand areas that we know in the Southeast and in the West in Colorado and Arizona, but we'll fund anywhere as long as there's verifiable comps. Or if you have a really competent realtor that can explain why there's a desire for this type of land. We're closing on one in Oklahoma, and I don't know, on the sales side in a week or two, that I never would have invested in that particular market. But the person that brought us the deal had a really competent realtor that's been doing land for 30 years out there. We've done one random places in Pennsylvania where they say, look, yeah, there's not a lot of comps, but there's very limited inventory type of thing. I think that, God, what was your question, Kendall? I feel like I was...
No, that's great.
Criteria. Okay, yeah. So depending on the exit strategy, we look at what's transacting, and then we pull based on that size and whatever that zoning is. And then on the ownership side, we typically target 5 to 7+ years out of state, out of county, individuals and trusts only. We will do specific campaigns to corporations, but we also target our marketing very specifically with that list that we're pulling. Our marketing material will differ if we're working or if we're targeting someone that say owns 10, 20, or 50+ lots versus the person that owns one lot. And we have potentially a more sophisticated approach whenever we're targeting those types of people. Residential on that side. And then whenever we're looking at doing the larger subdivides, we'll target residential and agricultural zoning in those particular markets.
Very good. Now, you talked a little bit about marketing just now. Let's continue on that vein. What type of marketing methods are you guys using right now on the acquisition side?
Yeah, so we've done them all. Direct mail is still our bread and butter to a certain extent, both neutral letters or postcards, as well as we've shifted from blind to blank offers. So we've had really great success with blank offers, meaning the first page is just an introduction to, hey, this is who we are. The next 2 pages are a purchase and sale agreement that's filled out with their information, but where it says purchase price, it's just left blank. I feel like that's opened up a lot of negotiations, and we've had a lot of success because you haven't necessarily offended someone by offering too low or overly excited and anchored them way too high. We've done cold calling and texting. We've outsourced to different companies for cold calling and texting. And then recently started doing social media ads. Ryan Pineda and I have worked together to create a land-specific ad using his face and his name and his brand, where we are running ads on Facebook and Instagram saying it's a video of him talking about land. And if you want to buy land or if you want to sell land, click this link. We've done a good amount of social media ads, which gives us like 2 or 3 leads a day. Honestly, social media has had really great turnaround time for us.
That's fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about the ratio of leads to contracts for direct mail, for the social media ads campaigns?
Yeah. So I think for direct mail, if I remember the last time I looked, I think our mailer to deal ratio is right around, I want to say 0.25%, give or take, maybe 0.1 to 0.25%, with our lead rate for direct mail being anywhere from 0.5% to 0.8%. So for people that are doing math, I think it's, I can't remember what those translate to, but that's direct mail. I feel like that within direct mail, the blank or blind offers gets a significantly deal rate than the neutral letters, which the neutral letters get a significantly higher lead rate compared to it. You might get more leads sending the neutral letter of the, are you not planning, or are you planning on building on your land? If not, give us a call type of construction focused postcards, or with my dogs on it or something like that. We send all sorts of fun creative mail. But so those get a really high lead rate. It's hard to say exactly what the deal rate is with social media. We've only been doing it for a couple months, but on a decent amount of spend, we've got a handful of deals that we've gotten. So I'd say, and a lot of them were house leads, honestly. I think with Pineda's house wholesaling brand, a lot of those people were submitting house leads, which now I just bounce right back to them. We are probably closing on 4 of those so far out of maybe a couple hundred leads, give or take.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So you mentioned the neutral letters versus the blank offers. So the neutral letters, if I'm understanding correctly, this is just, hey, are you interested in selling? Contact us because we're looking to buy. Versus these blank offers are more along the lines of, this is actually a contract with just no offer amount. Is that right?
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. Excellent. You said that you're getting a higher, it looks like you're getting a higher deal rate on those blank offers, correct?
Yeah, so we've only at this point maybe sent a handful of thousand, maybe 5 or 6,000 so far over the last few months trying this out. And they're working really well, especially for these much larger deals that we're doing of the multiple $100,000 acquisition price. It seems like these ones have been some of the most effective marketing campaigns. So we haven't blasted it out as much as we were doing. We were typically sending 10 to 12,000 mailers a month. But with these blank offers, our response rate and our deal close rate is significantly higher. I'm a stats guy, so I don't think the sample size is big enough to effectively tell you whether or not it's statistically significant yet. However, I do feel like this is one of the best marketing methods that we've tried so far in the past 3 years.
Yeah, I love that. Looking forward to seeing how that develops and shakes out. So, can you talk a little bit about what does your team look like for your business?
Yeah, so it's my wife and I run the company. She does more of the data pulling, keeping things organized, SOPs of taking my chicken scratch stuff that I've developed over the years and turning it into something legitimate. And then I manage kind of everything else of the deal closing, the management of the acquisition managers, which I've got three or four part-time acquisition managers, all US based, all commission only. I just recently fired my full-time acquisition manager that's salary plus commission. I just rehired one that he should be starting in a couple weeks now, and really excited to have him come on board during that time of in between over the past, maybe, I don't know how long it's been, maybe 2 months or so. We've really been focusing on revamping our processes, policies, and procedures of making sure that whenever we hire someone new, their incentives are fully and appropriately in line with what the organization is, and just doing a really good job organizing things. I think whenever I first got started in this business, it was really easy. You get a deal every 1,000 mailers that you're sending, and you double your money without even trying. And now it's gotten a little more challenging. And so we really wanted to hone it in. And I think that me being forced to be in a sales position again, really gave us a lot of insights of, okay, this is what we need to build out to be able to bring on another full-time person.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit more about the commission-only employees that you have, and what does that look like? If you're enjoying this episode of the Only Land Fans podcast, please let us know by subscribing and leaving a review. Now let's get back to the action.
Yeah, they all have access to the CRM. They have the ability to follow up with warm leads that we get from whether it's our outsourced cold calling campaign, cold texting campaign, or direct mail, as well as all the social media ads that are assigned to them. They work kind of lunchtime, evenings, weekends, and just manage it kind of part-time. They're all US based friends that wanted to get involved in the industry in some capacity that are in current sales position but want to make extra money. It's I give them in between 10 and 20% commission, depending on the deal, of what the net profit is, regardless of any debt service that I might have or any financing contingency. So it's good to have them, as backup for whenever my full-time salesperson can't handle it or I can't handle it, type of thing. But they're more on the sidelines, just helping with the excess.
Excellent. You had a very impressive career as a CEO for a hospital. Can you talk a little bit about what skill sets do you find just beautifully parallels with what you're doing in the land business right now?
Yeah. So healthcare is an extremely complex industry to work in. And I think the United States healthcare system is potentially the most regulated industry in the entire world. You are subject to review and accreditation through dozens of accreditation bodies. And so you have to really learn the right way to do things, which is very process heavy. Throughout, my education and then my early career, I got certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, which is just within the manufacturing and healthcare world of process improvement methodology that Toyota developed, which focuses on reduction of waste and elimination of variation. And I think being able to look at an organization and figure out, okay, here are where the bottlenecks are, here are where the constraints are. This is how we can efficiently or effectively improve that process to allow us to grow. So I think that process improvement, consistent, continuous improvement skill set that I developed working in healthcare has translated really well to this business. I think one of the challenges with that, of course, is this business is really simple. Send a bunch of freaking mail and close deals, and that's it. But that's so boring and that's hard for me. And then I think beyond that and the complexities related to managing an organization where you have, a few dozen direct reports, several hundred employees and everything like that, the specific leadership skills that I learned along the way to be a successful manager and successful leader to people that were much older than me, I think created an ability to navigate relationships appropriately and be able to code switch depending on the person. Of every employee that I had needed to be managed individually. And it's the exact same thing with sellers. You're going to work a lot differently than the former multifamily developer in New York than you will on the Mammy and Pappy in Mississippi or something like that that's selling their farmland. So being able to code switch, because one of the challenges I've faced, Kendall, in this business is I've never been in a sales position. I've done well in sales, I think, because of my rapport building and some of the leadership tactics and techniques, but I never learned how to operate or work in a sales role. So I was always very operationally minded. And I think that operational mindedness has helped build the system within the organization that we've built, but less of the sales side of things. And then I think all of that together, it's a data-driven approach of you have to operate with data, you have to have good data, you have to have clean data. And healthcare data was always super messy. Real estate data is messy, but not as messy. So learning how to effectively manage from a data standpoint and target specific, key performance indicators or indicators within the market that potentially lead to a good deal. I think that those are a handful of things that I translated from the corporate healthcare world into the land world.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, in this industry, I'm sure you've come across there are some land investors out there who are very deal oriented, meaning that they do whatever they can to get a deal and they see it through and then they dispo it and then they start the process all over again versus having some type of consistent business model that is systems and processes oriented. So if someone is looking to turn their land operation into an actual functioning land business, what advice would you provide those people?
It's a really great question because this business is really hard to create a well-functioning, consistent system. And that's been one of the pain points in this business is sometimes our cash flow is just like a sine wave. And
Mhm.
there's months where you're like, I'm freaking killing it. We brought in multiple 100,000 in sales. And then you deploy it all and you're like, I'm broke. I'm so bad at this. This is so hard. It's really tricky. And I think that the way to operationalize it and systematize it is one, document everything, document the process, and excuse me, and start tracking the data from a very early standpoint and listen to the people that are talking about it, not trying to sell you something of direct mail works, of send mail consistently over and over and over again. Cold calling works whenever you're, calling the appropriate people and you have a good script of do what the professionals are doing and do it over and over and over again. And you're going to have consistent deal flow. And then within that deal flow, you need to break it down, I feel like, into a couple categories. And there's the kind of wholesale double close or quick flip model where the turnaround time of the deal is potentially 60 days, 30 days or less, which is really great and can sustain what your operating expense of the business is. And being able to focus on that first, I think is crucial. And it's something that I regret not doing first because I think my brain was broken by my first deal being such, a six-figure profit deal. And I'm like, this is what every deal should be like. And then
Yeah.
I'd make 15, 20 grand on a deal. I'm like, this is dumb. This is a bad deal. Like, this is a waste of my time. And now I love those deals. I love those 5, 10, 15K profit deals because I view it as like a categorical income that contributes to our operating expense and marketing costs in the business. So I think being able to build the cash flow side of the business, the quick turnaround time is what's most crucial, and document those processes. You can replicate them over and over again. And then from there, be able to turn it more into an investment model. I think a lot of people hear land investing and they think of it as this passive income model type of business, and it's just not. It's an active income generating business. The reason we're not paying capital gains taxes is because we're considered dealers, and this is inventory. So think of it a wholesale pawn shop store model, and you need to be turning over those regular products over and over again. And then you can take that profit and partner with capital providers and high net worth individuals or people in your network to do some of these larger value add deals. Because that's been one of the struggles for me with this business is when you're doing just a land flip, the only value you're adding is taking inventory that's been off the market and putting it on the market. And I think whenever you're not doing some level of improvement, there's going to be a greater degree of competition, especially as there's been more people in the space gaining traction and more podcasts and more courses and everything like that. Of there's multiple thousands of people in your beautiful community that you've built that are learning this. So there is more competition, but being able to get that bread and butter down and then take those profits that you learn from those bread and butter into these value add projects of this one right here. Should we get it? Should it go right? This is going to generate at minimum, like in the worst case scenario, 350 to 400,000 in profit in probably like a 9 to 12 month period, which is great if you have the capital to be able to take it down, but most likely a $600,000 or $700,000 profit deal. But it takes work, it takes capital, it takes time. So I think balancing those quick cash flow ones versus those long, big ones, and not necessarily distracting yourself by trying to focus on both. It's build out the system of one first, depending on your financial situation and your investment thesis, and then add the other one to make it so where you have a fully functioning model.
Yeah, that's so good. That is so good. Now, you mentioned earlier about sales and how this is a newer skill set for you. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the big lessons that you've learned in your sales skill process that you've started building? If someone's listening to this and they're like, gosh, I am just not a salesperson at all, what takeaways can you give to those people to help build that sales skill set?
Yeah, I think a couple things, and then I'll expand on kind of the sales organization side of things and building a sales organization. I'm a firm believer, maybe I shouldn't say it that way. It's much more important to focus on your strengths and really getting good at your strengths and developing your strengths than it is to attempt to improve on your deficits or your weaknesses, because you're only going to be able to get so good. And it's not your fault. You didn't pick your parents. You didn't pick, won't get into too much like biological predeterminism, but you didn't pick the neighborhood you grew up in. You didn't pick that some people are naturally good at things. And it's really frustrating of when you're playing baseball and there's the lazy guy on the team that just hits bombs all the time. And you're like, dude, what? I work so hard and I can't do that. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I just wasn't good enough. But And then there's these people that really try and force themselves into a sales role, and it just will never work. So I think with that being said, you should try it because you can't make assumptions about yourself if you're like, I'm horrible at sales. And so if you've never done it, you don't know if you're horrible at sales. So go do it. Scab your knees and try it out. There's tons of resources out there. I love Chris Voss and everything that he's put out he wrote Never Split the Difference. He has tons of material on YouTube. There's so many trainings that you can learn from all of the different individual land trainers out there. There's YouTube University. There's podcasts out there of look at sales organizations training and learn this process of sales as much as you can, and then go out there and do it. The worst thing that happens is you don't get a deal or someone cusses you out or something like that. The risk is so low. And until you've tried something potentially a couple hundred times or a couple thousand times, you're not going to know if you're any good at it. And then from there, you have to look at yourself and determine what you're actually good at. If you're not good at sales and you're not good at building an organization, what are you good at? And maybe founding a land company or founding a development company or a flipping company or a real estate investing company is just not for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think what I love about networking with great entrepreneurs is the lack of self-certainty that we have of, dude, our model works for us in whatever capacity that we've built it. It's not going to work for everyone. I don't think my way is the correct or prescribed path or the ideal way of doing things. I think we all get grass is greener on the other side. I've seen businesses that people want or people that see my businesses. I'm like, dude, you don't see the other stuff. You don't see the $400,000 note you have to pay off or the deal that didn't close or the stress of operating a business. So you have to look at yourself and see whatever role that you are in this idea of a business that you're creating and see if it actually matches up to you. And then I think, and I can pause there for a second because I know I just said a lot related to it, answer.
No, it's fantastic. I love hearing this perspective. You mentioned talking about sales organization that you wanted to expand on that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that my tendency being an executive in a hospital was to find the greatest and best talent for whatever service line or department that I could possibly find, hire them and pay them as much as I was allowed to pay them to do the best job possible and empower them by motivating them, getting them behind the vision of the organization that we're attempting to create, and having a fully aligned incentive through the best talent to make that vision happen. Specifically within healthcare, that's so crucial because there's certain licensure and certification of you've got nurses and doctors and therapists and maintenance people and stuff like that. You can't just pick and choose a jack of all trades to put in this position. You need someone that both appeals to a larger audience and has those jack of all trade skill sets, but has specific expertise in whatever it is that they're managing within the hospital. And that was my approach to this organization is I need to find whoever my corporate brainwashed, master's educated brain thinks is the best person for this entry level acquisitions manager role and hire them and pay them as much as I can for a good, decent base with ridiculously competitive commission. And what it amounted to is hiring someone that on paper was fantastic, of 20 plus years in the industry, private equity experience, multi-billion-dollar development experience, had done land acquisitions for huge home builders and everything like that, was typically making several $100,000 salary in a position. And that's who I went after and hired them. And initially they did great. And I think what my tendency is to not be a micromanager, to give them a lot of autonomy. And I think I did that far too quickly. And I think what happened there is there were so many deals where they were incentivized to get more and more deals and larger deals, regardless of how long the turnaround time was on them. So they were incentivized inappropriately. So where it didn't matter if the deal took 1 month or 20 months or 5 years to sell, they're going to get compensation on it because that's how we built the contract. And it doesn't matter what potential financing contingencies or debt contingencies or equity that I'm giving out in the deal, they make the same regardless. And I think that has not screwed me over necessarily, but it made it so where there was a misalignment of incentives of, dude, stop making offer on these $4 million deals that are going to take 3 to 4 years to turn around because you're going to make a ton of money on it. I need to go raise all that money that's for a speculative deal as versus go do that bread and butter deal of buy for 15, sell for 25 that, yeah, you're not going to make as much money, but if you do 1,000 of them a year type of thing, I think it's learning to effectively incentivize your employees and have them totally aligned with your organization and having a document and a commission structure that makes it so where that's the case.
Yeah, that's incredibly good insight. I think a lot of people, and myself included, when I first started the land business, I just wanted to do land deals. And it wasn't until you got into it that you realized, like, oh, yeah, there are $1 million deals out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I should be taking those deals down. So I think that's a really good insight, especially as it relates to how you're building out that team. Now, switching gears a little bit, can you talk about your dispo activities and how your company approaches the disposition process?
We are pretty easy of we find a local expert realtor that whoever is selling the most land and is everything is a two-way street of we make beyond just selling the most land, we make sure we like them, trust them, get to know them. And we ask them how much that land is worth that we're in the negotiations for, that we can't get the data beyond the third-party MLS sites that we're pulling the comps from. And whenever we're done, we give it to them to list. And it's as simple as that. If we work really closely with realtors that are land experts to sell our properties. That being said, I think as going back to what I was talking about of wanting to build that consistent cash flow model and not have your cash flow look like a sine wave, I think we're going to start doing not necessarily more wholesaling, but potentially more double closing and just a quick turnaround of when this new person comes on board of establishing a few builder relationships, getting their buy box, like how a lot of people have built this business, which is really smart for all you guys that have built your business this way. So we can have that bread and butter business of, hey, yeah, we're only making 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 grand per deal. But we've established builder relationships to be able to dispo those for whenever the margins don't make sense for us to purchase, take down, and potentially sell to a retail buyer on the market. So it gives us greater buying power whenever you establish those relationships, even if we're just wholesaling, because we can essentially transactional finance it ourselves or something along those lines. But yeah, just realtors.
What are some of the top signs of a great land expert realtor that you, after talking to them, you're like, okay, they've checked these boxes, let's put them on the team?
They provide data for whatever their analysis of that property is. They're not saying, I think it's worth this much because of this, but they provide meaningful, accurate data where, going back to what I was saying about market selection of real estate is so location specific. Don't pull me a comp on the other side of the world that is going to be completely irrelevant to this type of product of look at it and be able to tell me exactly, okay, this is why it's worth this much. And then more importantly than that, of just being able to do what any good realtor should be able to do, which is pull comps, they understand the cost of development and what the intended user is going to do and how to back themselves into that price of, okay, it's going to cost this much for water taps or sewer taps. If electric is not run to the property, it's going to cost this much, or this well and septic is going to cost this much right here. This is on a paved road versus a dirt road. This is going to make this type of difference to it to bring the value up or down. And also, if they're willing to go drive the property, that's huge. As versus just, I'm just going to pull numbers for you. I think going to go look at a property in person is a great indicator of a great agent that's going to actually put the work in for you, because many land deals, you're making so much less commission than you would on a house. You have to hustle to be able to do it and do it right. And then I think last, being able to answer that initial question we ask of, hey, we've done deals all over the country. There's certain markets that you need to be worried about box turtles or wetlands or floodplains or whatever invasive species or protected species, and what kills deals in these markets. And if they can't effectively answer, this is what kills deals in these markets, they're maybe not a land specialist agent of. We had a deal recently that we were looking at purchasing and the numbers seemed really good. It was going to be a minor development in New York. And I'm looking at our standard due diligence that we do across the entire country. And it looked good. I called the city commissioner. I was like, hey, this would be our plan to split it into this many lots. There's a good amount of access. Just looking at the subdivision regulations, this is what I think that we could get. I see that there's wetlands on a corner of the lot, but even without impacting the wetlands at all, this is what we can do. And he's like, yeah, you're right. Looks good.
Calling all ambitious land flippers, ready to transform your business with proven systems and processes? Imagine this. One of my students recently closed 2 land deals and got another under contract in just 24 hours. That's the power of a well-oiled land flipping machine. My exclusive coaching program is specifically designed for action takers just like you. We'll build out your entire operation from lead gen to dispo, implementing these systems on real deals from day one. But hurry, I'm only accepting 3 new students until 2025. If you've done deals, have a growth mindset, and are ready to scale, visit kindlecall.com now. Let's turn your land business into a consistent profit powerhouse.
And then I spoke to a land agent out there and he's like, yeah, I see what you're seeing. I actually looked at this property 6 months ago and denied listing it with whoever was trying to buy it then. Because if you go on the New York specific wetlands mapper, the entire thing is covered in wetlands of this specific thing where you can do it, but it's going to cost you, it was like upwards of $1 million in wetland mitigation credits or something like that, or impact fee credits. That the deal sounded super great seller financing terms. It was like 25 grand down, 250K purchase price, and it balloons in 15 years, no payments for 15 years. And yeah, that guy saved us a ton of money because we wouldn't have been able to do anything with that land.
Wow. Yeah, the value of a good land expert agent. That's awesome. What would you consider to be your superpower?
I think that I'm pretty good at getting people to believe in a vision greater than themselves, whether it's within an organization that I'm being a part of or building, or something that they're working on creating themselves, of getting them to expand their mind and think a little bit bigger and a little bit differently, and recognize that, hey, it's a step-by-step process to build it. So connecting that large vision and turning it into something feasible and realistic and possible. I think that's something that I'm pretty good at, is getting that belief in a shared vision.
I love that. Do you consider yourself a visionary or an integrator?
Visionary for sure.
Yeah. It's really cool because you do have some integrator qualities, like whenever you're talking about like the data and things like that. So that's a powerful combination, right? Like that visionary with the understanding and the probably tolerance for some of those integrator qualities. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. I think being a COO was my least favorite job ever, because all it was is that integrator activity of, you just have to go create all the time, and you have to zoom in and zoom out constantly whenever you're in a leadership position, and being able to get your staff to understand that, I think, is crucial. But I don't love operations like I love believing, because it's obvious it's way more work to be an operator than it is to sit back and drink a glass of whiskey and talk about the future. Yeah.
That's great. So what is your definition of success?
I think my individual definition of success is being able to recognize whatever my potential is through, and it's a complicated answer of, I don't know what my potential is because I don't view myself as financially free. I have some arbitrary and realistic metrics for myself and my family that I think once those are hit, it's not about continuously chasing this goal or this goalpost or this net worth amount or anything like that, but it's, I want to get to a place where I never have to think about money for the rest of time, to be able to recognize what my potential is. You can't fight a battle on multiple fronts. And if you're thinking about your mortgage payment or your car payment or your business expense or anything like that, I think you're incapable of thinking and truly getting to explore what the most successful or free version of yourself is. And I think it's, I guess, to try and like effectively answer, it's recognizing whatever your individual potential is. And I think that's super individualistic.
That's so good. What has been your biggest surprise so far on your journey in the land space?
My biggest surprise, God, this sounds mean, but how bad my competition is. I own a lot of land. I get a lot of letters from people wanting to buy my land. And on land that's been sitting for a while, I call you guys, potentially some of the people that are listening, and I've never gotten a call back. Never once. And I have called dozens and dozens of people saying, hey, this is Mason, you sent me a letter. I'd be interested in chatting. And I've never gotten a call back from anyone. And that is a huge surprise. So it's this simple answer of, how do you do well in this business? Freaking answer the phone and call people back. Like, just follow up. That's it. Do what you say you're going to do and follow up with people, and you're going to close way more deals than anyone else.
Yeah, that's such a great insight because we hear oftentimes, I get this question asked all the time, is do you think that the land space is too competitive? And my answer to that is it more competitive than it was 5 years ago? Probably. There are more people in the industry. But when you talk about competitive, you can't not consider the quality of that competition. Just because there are more people doesn't mean that it's more competitive, right? So I think that's a great point that you illustrated there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's an effective negotiation tactic too, of going back to one of the first questions you asked of regarding raising money and how I initially got that capital and being able to have a track record that then increase the track record because I can, if there's a new investor that's interested in investing, whether it's in the fund or in an individual deal that we're doing, I say, hey, call David. He's done a dozen deals with us. He can talk about me. You know, I'm able to give names out. Same thing in this business of call Tracy at Fidelity Title. She's done 50 deals with me. I'm legit. If something comes up in the title process that allows us to not close, it's not like us being like, it's your fault, but we do close deals. We can provide all of these references in business. And then those sellers that are saying things along the lines of, what can you offer me for the land? Go through the spiel and be like, we can do $13,500. They're like, I'm looking at an offer right now for 19,000. And my response to that is always, you should take that offer. I want what's best for you. Give that person a call. And whenever they don't answer or respond to your emails, give me a call back and I'll close at 13,500. And that gets a lot of responses and a lot of deals because they do call these people and you guys don't answer the freaking phone. So answer the phone. Like, I want people to succeed in this business. It goes back to what I was saying about if Dan Haberkost and I are going to be the ones that are really attempting to bridge this institutional gap of get significant private equity money into this space, tens of millions of dollars for people within communities like what you've built, Kendall, to be able to deploy not just land flips, but minor developments, major developments, and potentially vertical construction. Of we can really disrupt the space through geographical diversity and risk mitigation through it by having an army of land investors out there. But you guys need to answer the phones.
Step one, answer the phone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so good. I love that. If you could go back and tell yourself three pieces of advice when you were first starting out in the land industry, what would they be?
Record everything that you do through some sort of video software or something like that. We just started using, this is not a pitch. I'm not using them. My wife's using them to document redo our SOPs. Scribe.ai. It like records you doing stuff and creates like beautiful SOPs for you. So record everything that you're doing and build standard operating procedures from that list is number one. Number two is go after a significantly greater amount of the small, quick deals rather than focus on big deals. I think that so often I'm pretty growth oriented and I'm very much of the mindset of it's easier to make 100 grand than 10 grand. But if you can build a system to make 10 grand 10 times in the space that same amount of time that it took to make 100 grand, even if it's more work, you get a lot more reps and a lot more practice. And then I think the third one would be I should not have removed myself from the sales process of the organization as early as I did. I think that I should have been much, much more involved and in the sales part of the organization of no matter how big it gets, you don't want to be the doctor that becomes like a leader in the hospital that doesn't know how to do surgery anymore or something like that. So I think still close deals myself and be involved in it, not out of a micromanagement, but you got to stay sharp in this. So I think those would be the three things that I wish I had known going into it.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. What's your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
God, I wish I had some grand answer. I'm looking to build a family office, a private equity firm. I think business is really fun. The land and development is the seeds to what I'm working on getting into now within the healthcare private equity world of mergers and acquisitions with hospitals and some huge development projects that I'm working on connecting the capital to of the multiple 100 million ones. So that's really fun. My wife and I love traveling. So I want to travel a bunch. I love eating. I'm a big fan of food. Like I'm a foodie. I love eating food and I love experiencing cultures through food. I love whiskey too. I'm a big Scotch guy, big fan of Scotch. I just passed my certified Scotch professional, which is just like it's like in the wine world, there's sommeliers. In the Scotch world, there's a similar certification track. So I just got my level 1, which gives me an excuse to drink more Scotch. So I enjoy studying Scotch. I love playing golf. My specialty is to drive the green and then 3-putt it, which is why I'm still a 10 handicap. But yeah, I like having fun. I like having great conversations with great people. I love building businesses and playing Monopoly with my friend of playing business Monopoly, not the game Monopoly. I love experiencing cultures and traveling with my wife. and yeah, playing outside as much as I can. I don't have any like crazy passionate journey type of thing. I just like having fun.
I love that. That's so cool. Are there any entrepreneurs, thought leaders, business owners that you like to follow?
Yeah, I that's a great question. On the entrepreneur space, I really, Kendall, you put a lot of great content out there. I really like Alex Hormozy and Ryan Pineda. I enjoy the content they put out there. I enjoy following anyone that is willing to admit loss. I cannot stand when I hear people saying, I've never lost money in a deal or this, that, or the other thing. You're either lying or you haven't done enough business. So I enjoy their content. There's plenty of authors out there that I love. I love reading. I'm an avid and constant reader. I don't know. I could give a lot of recommendations in that space in books I enjoy reading.
Yeah, what do we need to put on our short list to read?
Oh, goodness. For, I guess, this community that only likes reading self-help entrepreneurial books, but maybe a different answer than what people would typically give. I think two great books to read that are really applicable to business in general, but just understanding people, which business is people. Sapiens by Yuval, God, I forget his name. He just came out with a new book too. Sapiens by someone, and then Behave by Robert Sapolsky. I think reading those books in conjunction with each other. Sapiens is a brief history of humankind, gives you a lot of insight into human behavior and how people just operate. Behave is the neuroscience behind human behavior. And it's really fascinating to really understand how people work and how people function. Behave is extremely dense for those of you guys that like extremely dense books, but super, super great. Even if it takes you a year or two to read that book, I think will help make you a better business owner, better in relationships, and just give you more insight into the human experience.
Yeah, that's great. Those will go on my list. I love reading about those topics, so I'm very excited to check those out. I want to thank you so much, Mason, for being so generous with your time and your knowledge. Thank you for giving to us today. How can we give back to you? What connections or resources are you currently looking for?
Yeah, if you are an accredited investor and are looking to invest capital, we do have a fund, Ground Up. If you go to groundupfund.com, I am allowed to say this. We are allowed to solicit on podcasts and everything like that to raise capital. Minimum $50,000 investment if you want to invest in deals like the ones that we're talking about and that we're doing and so many people in the community are doing. You just must be an accredited investor to participate in that. If you have deals that need funding, feel free to submit them to our website, gupland.com. We'd love to partner with you on those deals that you need help taking over the finish line. And then just connect with me, open up a conversation, open up dialogue. I enjoy having conversations, whether it's about land, about business, about people, thought, psychology, whiskey, golf, anything like that. Either my website, masonrmcdonald.com, or Mason R. McDonald on LinkedIn or on Instagram. Find me on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm happy to connect with anyone. Maybe shoot me a message just because I get lots and lots of daily friend requests from people that, are just trying to solicit, I don't know, virtual assistant services. I get like 50 of those a day for some reason. Yeah, reach out, connect. But yeah, I think that's the main thing of just developing great relationships with people in this industry is one of my favorites.
Fantastic. And we will put all of those links in the show notes as well and in the video description. Thanks so much, Mason. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all for joining us and asking such fantastic questions. We are going to be having another episode next week. We'd love for you to join us again on our virtual meetup. Until then, take care, be safe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye. If you're interested in hearing from other seven-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at onlylandfans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.